Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a hidden, absolutely fascinating biological drama playing out completely unseen right around us. We're looking at a pathogen that bridges the gap between everyday mammalian ecology and a sheer medical emergency. It's an invisible enemy, and honestly, it's far closer to home than you might think.
I mean, what on earth links stepping into a dusty, abandoned camping cabin to triggering a deadly cytokine storm? You know, a massive, destructive overreaction of the human immune system. This sneaky threat is sometimes ominously called camping cabin disease, and it is a literal masterpiece of viral stealth. Okay, let's dive into this and investigate exactly how it happens. So, here is our roadmap for today. 1. The invisible threat. 2. The rodent reservoirs. 3. A tale of two syndromes. 4. The cytokine storm. 5. An emerging climate threat. And finally, 6. Prevention and control. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The invisible threat, a hidden viral danger.
Now, you might be thinking this is some rare, isolated anomaly. It's actually not. The scientific literature highlights a staggering 150,000 to 200,000 global cases of hantavirus every single year. And the scariest part? You don't even need to be bitten by an animal to get infected. Human infections primarily happen just by inhaling tiny, invisible, aerosolized particles of dust that have been contaminated with rodent excreta or saliva. You just take a breath, and the virus has found its new host.
This brings us right back to that infamous nickname, camping cabin disease. Imagine you're opening up a sealed barn or maybe a vacation cabin after a long winter. You naturally grab a broom and start dry sweeping. Well, the ultimate terrifying irony here is that your everyday household broom is the catalyst. That simple act of sweeping stirs up microscopic viral particles into the air you're breathing. So the crucial point is, this aerosolized dust is the primary totally stealthy transmission route of this virus.
Section 2. The rodent reservoirs. Carriers globally.
To put this into perspective, a massive 42% of total mammalian biodiversity on Earth is made up of rodents, and they live on almost every single continent. And here is the grand evolutionary irony. These hantaviruses, which belong to the Bunia virales order, do not make the reservoir rodents sick at all. Zero. A rat infected with the sole virus shows absolutely no difference in health or lifespan compared to a totally uninfected rat. The virus just quietly hitches a ride for the entire lifetime of the animal. But it's not just any random rodent carrying any random virus. There's this remarkably specific lock-and-key relationship going on. Each distinct hantavirus is uniquely and persistently adapted to a very specific host. For instance, the Cinnombre virus relies entirely on the deer mouse in the Americas. The sole virus travels worldwide with the brown rat. Over in Europe, the Pulmonary virus uses the bank vole, and the Hantavirus is carried by the striped field mouse in Asia. So the ecology of the disease is completely dependent on the ecology of that specific mouse or rat.
Section 3. A tale of two syndromes, HFRS versus HPS.
Scientists actually divide this threat into Old World and New World categories. Old World hantaviruses, like Hantan and Pulmonary over in Europe and Asia, cause hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, or HFRS for short. This hits the kidneys incredibly hard. Meanwhile, the New World viruses, like Cinnombre and Andes in the Americas, cause Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS. This is an aggressive variant that targets the lungs and heart, leading to very rapid respiratory distress. To underscore just how severe this gets, look at this number, up to 50%. That is the massive case fatality rate seen in some outbreaks of Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. While the Old World renal version has a mortality rate hovering between 1 and 15%, the New World pulmonary version is a highly, highly lethal threat. It can progress from nonspecific mild flu-like symptoms to total respiratory failure in just a matter of hours or days. No joke.
Section 4. The cytokine storm. Cellular pathogenesis.
Now, what's really interesting about this is exactly how the body ends up defeating itself. The clinical definition here is a loss of endothelial barrier integrity, which doctors call capillary leak syndrome. But to put it simply, the virus infects the cells lining your blood vessels, and your immune system overreacts so violently that it essentially turns your blood vessels into leaky pipes. Fluid just pours right out of your vascular system and directly into your lungs, causing rapid pulmonary edema. You are, quite literally, drowning from the inside. Let's walk through the exact cellular attack mechanism. First, the virus actively blocks the infected cell's natural self-destruct sequence, which is known as apoptosis. Because the cell won't just die quietly, it sets off an explosive, excessive natural immune response. Your CD8 plus T cells become massively overactive, and your levels of vascular endothelial growth factor just spike. This toxic combo degrades V-cadherin, which is essentially the cellular glue holding your blood vessel walls together. The barrier becomes severely compromised, leading straight into shock.
Section 5. An emerging climate threat. The expanding footprint.
Let's move along and see how this builds across modern history. Hantaviruses actually first gained major medical attention back in the 1950s, when over 3,000 United Nations troops suddenly fell ill during the Korean War. That's when the Old World HFRS was identified. But the New World variations, they were completely unappreciated until 1993, when a sudden, terrifying outbreak hit the Four Corners region of the US, identifying HBS. Fast forward to 2012, and Germany saw an enormous peak of over 2,800 cases. So the footprint of this pathogen is definitely expanding.
And the major driving force behind this expansion? Climate change. Influenced by a shifting climate, unusually wet winters and intense rainfall lead to a massive surplus of grain and vegetation. This abundant food supply causes the local mouse populations to absolutely boom. It's simple math, really. When you have an explosion of the reservoir host, the statistical probability of a human crossing paths with an infected mouse just skyrockets. The ecology of our changing Earth is directly dictating human disease transmission.
Section 6. Prevention and Control. Defending against Hanta.
So how do we stop it? The primary mechanism of defense is sanitary prophylaxis, basically serious rodent control. You have to completely seal and rodent-proof your residence and destroy any suitable rodent dwellings near your home. But here's a really surprising fact. Domestic pet rats are perfectly capable of harboring and spreading the sole virus without the owner ever knowing. Because remember, the rat doesn't get sick. If you keep pet rats, having them tested by a vet is a highly recommended safety measure. And of course, use particulate respirators and protective goggles when you're in high-risk areas. And this brilliantly illustrates the practical application of everything we've just learned. If you are cleaning a potentially contaminated space, like that dusty cabin or an old shed, this is the exact safe cleaning protocol. First, ventilate the area thoroughly. Open up all the doors and windows. Second, wet down the dust with a 1 to 10% bleach solution or detergent to neutralize the virus and stop it from floating into the air. Third, use damp cloths to mop or wipe surfaces. Never, under any circumstances, dry sweep or vacuum dry dust in these environments. Actually, just scratch that old cleaning habit entirely.
So we are left with this final crucial thought. As global temperatures continue to rise, bringing erratic weather patterns that cause rodent populations to bloom right in our backyards, we really have to respect the ecology around us. The next time you grab a broom to clean out that old dusty shed you haven't opened since last year, ask yourself, is it really as harmless as it looks? Well, armed with this knowledge, you now know exactly how to protect yourself. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and stay safe out there.